Jewish globalism and cultural erosion. The impact of coercive assimilation on national identity. The term globalism refers to an ideological framework that promotes economic, political, and cultural interconnectedness on a global scale, often advocating for reduced national sovereignty in favor of international cooperation and integration. While its proponents argue that it fosters economic growth, technological progress, and multicultural exchange, critics contend that globalism undermines national identities, weakens traditional cultures, and serves as a vehicle for coercive assimilation. The impact of globalism on cultural identity. One of the most significant criticisms of globalism is its tendency to erode the distinct cultural identities of host nations. Through mass immigration, globalist policies have facilitated large-scale demographic changes, often without broad public support. Critics argue that this process leads to culturicide, or cultural genocide, the systematic destruction of indigenous or national cultures through dilution, displacement, or outright replacement. Coercive assimilation, a key mechanism in this process, pressures local populations to accept and integrate foreign cultural norms, often at the expense of their own traditions. While framed as inclusivity or diversity, coercive assimilation has historically led to the marginalization or erasure of indigenous and national identities. Language replacement, the rewriting of historical narratives, and the enforcement of ideological conformity further exacerbate these concerns. The historical evolution of Jewish globalism. The roots of modern globalism can be traced back to various political and economic movements, particularly those associated with international socialism along the 19th and 20th centuries. Many early proponents of socialist internationalism sought to dissolve national borders in favor of a global proletarian state, a vision that was later adapted and rebranded into economic globalism the latter half of the 20th century. The role of Jewish intellectuals in the development of globalist thought has been a subject of historical discussion, particularly due to the involvement of prominent Jewish figures in international finance, media, and political movements advocating for transnational governance and open borders. Several key individuals have played significant roles in shaping globalist ideologies, particularly in the realms of economic policy, political theory, and international relations. In international finance, figures such as the Rothschild banking family have historically been associated with global economic networks, playing a crucial role in funding governments, facilitating international trade, and supporting financial institutions that transcend national borders. Their influence on central banking and global financial structures has often been cited in discussions on economic globalization. In the realm of political theory, intellectuals such as Karl Marx, the co-author of the Communist Manifesto, laid the ideological groundwork for international socialism, which sought to dissolve national borders in favor of a global proletarian state. Later theorists, such as the Frankfurt School intellectuals, many of whom were Jewish, including Theodor Adorno, Max Horkheimer, and Herbert Marcuse, contributed to the development of critical theory, which has been influential in reshaping Western cultural and social policies toward a more cosmopolitan and globalist orientation in media and cultural influence. Jewish-owned or influenced institutions, including major news organizations, Hollywood studios, and publishing houses, have played a role in shaping narratives that promote multiculturalism, global cooperation, and economic interdependence. Figures such as George Soros, through his Open Society foundations, have actively funded initiatives that support open borders, immigration policies, and the weakening of nationalistic movements in favor of global governance. David Ben-Gurion, the first Prime Minister of Israel, in a 1960 interview with Look magazine, predicted a future world government based in Jerusalem. The widely circulated version of his quote reads, "In Jerusalem, the United Nations a truly united nations, will build a shrine of the prophets to serve the federated union of all continents. This will be the seat of the Supreme Court of mankind, to settle all controversies among the federated continents, as prophesied by Isaiah. Population transfer, forced displacement, and ethnic cleansing are powerful tools that have been used throughout history to reshape societies, often serving political or ideological agendas. Forced migration, whether through war, economic coercion, or state-sponsored resettlement programs, has been employed to alter demographic compositions, weaken national identities, and disrupt cultural continuity. Ethnic cleansing, as a more extreme form of this strategy, seeks to remove particular ethnic, racial, or religious groups to create a more ideologically homogeneous society. Critics argue that globalist movements, particularly those influenced by Jewish intellectuals and financiers, have utilized these tactics to engineer societal transformation that aligns with their broader political and economic goals. By promoting mass immigration, open borders, and multicultural policies, they effectively dissolve national identities and historical cohesion, making populations more susceptible to global governance, consumerist economic models, and ideological reorientation. This shift in demographic and cultural landscapes leads to a population that is less resistant to globalist policies, reinforcing transnational control structures and reducing the power of nation-states to govern autonomously. The story of the Trojan horse comes from Greek mythology, where the Greeks, unable to breach the walls of Troy after a long siege, resorted to a deceptive trick. They built a massive wooden horse, hollowed out to conceal soldiers inside, and presented it as a gift to the Trojans. Believing the war was over and the horse a peace offering, the Trojans brought it into their city, only for the hidden soldiers to emerge at night, opening the gates for the Greek army and leading to the fall of Troy. The phrase, "Beware of Greeks bearing gifts," has since become a warning against deceitful generosity. Some critics draw a parallel between this story and Jewish globalism and international socialism, arguing that globalist agendas often present themselves as benevolent or progressive, but conceal underlying motives to dismantle national sovereignty, disrupt cultural cohesion, and centralize power under global governance. Just as the Trojans were lulled into complacency by a gift, nations may be led to accept policies that ultimately serve the interests of a select few, reshaping societies in ways that align with globalist aspirations. Conclusion. In conclusion, globalism presents a complex and contentious challenge to national identities, cultural traditions, and the sovereignty of states. While promoted as a force for economic growth, technological progress, and multicultural harmony, the consequences of globalist policies, such as coerced assimilation, forced migration, and the erosion of indigenous cultures, can lead to profound social and political disruption. The historical roots of globalism in international socialism and its rebranding as economic and cultural interconnectedness raise concerns about the motivations behind such ideologies. By leveraging tactics like mass immigration, open borders, and transnational governance, globalist forces, including those associated with Jewish intellectuals and financiers, have been accused of seeking to reshape societies to fit their broader political and economic goals. As nations face increasing demographic shifts and ideological pressures, the cautionary tale of the Trojan horse serves as a poignant metaphor. Under the guise of progress and inclusion, globalist agendas may subtly dismantle the very foundations of national identity and sovereignty, leading to a future shaped by external control rather than self-determined cultural evolution.